Hello, and welcome to the Talented Amateurs Podcast. My name is Joe Randolph, your host, and today we have Miranda Solomons, realtor with Keller Williams Realty and founder of Charlotte Native Real Estate Advisors. She is a top 10% producer in the region of North Carolina and Charlotte. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the real estate market and as a buyer, and as a seller, what are some of the things that you should be paying attention to? This episode is in part two of a two-part series, but today is really focused on understanding this crazy market. It's not just happening in one state, it's happening all over the country. And today, Miranda and I will dive into just a little bit of that and how you should navigate it. What are some of the things you should be looking for, and really ensuring that you're getting the most out of your investment when you're looking to purchase a home, whether it's personal property, commercial property, whatever your buying needs are. So Miranda, how you doing today? And welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Joe. I'm doing great today. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and share with you.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining. I know Sundays are usually one of those days where you just get a chance to just do you. So I do appreciate you joining us today. And looking forward to this conversation. As I've worked with you in the past, just with some of my real estate needs in the area, I felt like this conversation is important, particularly just helping people understand this crazy market. There's a lot of nuances with interest rates low, with the price of lumber skyrocketing, and just inventory of homes going down. And wanted to really make sure that we can dive into a lot of those different topics today. But as we get started, just tell us a little bit about you and your background and why you just so excellent in what you do. And how do you
Well,
get
thank
in?
you. Thank you. So I'm actually a native of Charlotte, as the name of my company would suggest. Here all my life, I call myself a legacy realtor because my dad was a realtor in Charlotte for 30 years. So my sister and I kind of grew up watching this business. And I've always been intrigued about home buying and things like that. However, my dad suggested when I was 18 and graduated high school that I should get my real estate license. And of course, being an 18-year-old and I knew everything there was to know, of course, I did not do that because I said, no, I'm going to go to college first and then I'm going to go get a job. And that's what I did. And I worked that job for 18 years. And a few years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, I decided, you know what, maybe my dad was right all those years. I should look into getting a real estate license, and I did. And it's been the absolute best thing I could have ever done. I really do wish I had started into real estate a long time ago because it's my passion. And I sometimes sit around and lament, how could I have been working outside of my passion for helping people and helping people build wealth? How could I have been working outside of that for so long and just, and kind of felt fulfilled, but now I really know what fulfillment in what you do is. So, like I said, I'm glad to be here and I'm glad to share with you and glad to talk about this market, man, because it's something special. The real estate market is a living, breathing being. And it's different today than it was yesterday. And it's different today than it'll be tomorrow. So having the opportunity to share and just talk about what makes the real estate market so interesting and just so different than any other investment vehicle is really a blessing for me.
Great. And when you talk about your business, what services do you offer today? Do you just focus on homes for personal property, or do you focus on commercial? So tell us a little more about some of the services that you offer.
Sure. So in real estate, there is residential brokerage, there is commercial, there's property management, and some other offshoots of each of those three. I focus on residential brokerage. I don't really do anything in the commercial space. I do have people that come to me and ask me, are you able to represent me? I'm interested in leasing this building, buying this building, that sort of thing. And as where my career is right now, I want to make sure that I do everything in excellence. So when it does come to people saying, hey, I got property that I need managed, or I need to buy this building and that sort of thing, right now I'm referring those out to people who specialize in those areas of real estate, so that I can focus on where my business is, which is residential brokerage.
Awesome. Now, in some cases, as you are working with people, there's a trusted advisor relationship that happens, and as you go about your process with working with clients and potential clients, what is your process when you are engaging with new clients? Because you mentioned the wealth building process. You're almost like part of their financial strategy and their wealth building strategy. So some of the things that you need to, or that you are looking at, and some of the questions that you ask potentially could offer. So tell us about your process when you're working with clients to really help them find that right home and their property.
Absolutely. So I do refer to myself as the residential real estate investments wealth advisor for my clients, because it really is just that important. So part of my process is making sure that my clients are educated, whether they are purchasing their first home, which I definitely think the education piece is huge there, just because, and I do want to go ahead and preface everything that I say by saying I am licensed to sell real estate in North Carolina and South Carolina. Most of what I'm going to refer to while we're talking is North Carolina specific. And it's important that I point that out because real estate is hyper local. So what goes in North Carolina may not go in Florida. Or South Carolina or Georgia. So I do want to just say that a lot of the things that I'm talking about are going to be North Carolina specific. But anyway, getting back to that education piece, I like to make sure that my clients understand that real estate, right? So you have to be listening to a real estate professional licensed in the state where you live. All demographics want to listen to Mama Nim, and all demographics want to listen to their aunties and people who purchased homes 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I bought my first house in 2004. Nothing that was true in 2004 is still true in 2021, except that homes are still for sale.
Right.
That's the only thing that has remained the same. So if I'm purchasing a home in 2021, I've got to align myself with someone who understands the laws as they pertain to buying and selling real estate. They have to understand the ethical obligations that they have. You have to understand the representation. Do I represent you? Do I represent the seller? If I'm talking to a seller, can I still represent a buyer in a dual agency situation? What do those terms mean? So I have to make sure that the very first thing is that we sit down, and before we get into talking about the hardwood floors and the granite countertops and all the wonderful things that house so much fun, we really have to sit down and talk about the things that you really need to understand. And then after we talk about the things that you really need to understand in the real estate market, let's talk about this real estate market and how challenging it can be for any buyer, let alone home buyer, to get a home under contract.
And so, as you think about this current market, how would you describe the current market and what's impacting it locally, nationally? Help us understand some of the trends that's really driving the demand that we're seeing and currently in the North Carolina, South Carolina area, but also, some of the national trends. To tell us a little bit more about this market and how we need to understand what's impacting it.
Definitely. So the word that I would use for this market is opportunistic. I would say that there are lots of opportunities for buyers that are ready, willing, and able. I'll get back to that. And then there are certainly a lot of opportunities for sellers that are ready, willing, and able to sell. Okay. So what does it mean to be ready, willing, and able? Well, as a buyer, right, you've got to be all three. So you've got to, in this market, again, this isn't 2004, her first house, and all I had to bring to the table was $500, and they just gave me a house.
The
In
days
this,
are the days. Okay.
I look back on that, I'm like, they gave me a house for $500. But still, and a lot of people are still in that mentality. It just does not exist. It does not happen anymore. So in today's market, buyers need to come to the table with their own funds, period, full stop. Are there down payment assistance programs? There are. Are there opportunities for you to ask the seller to cover some of your closing costs? Those opportunities are fewer and further between, but yes, those opportunities exist. But as a buyer coming to the table in this market, you don't need to bank on that, right? Got it. You need to come to the table with your money saved, ready to go, credit good, and ready to execute on whichever house you find that you like. The opportunities for sellers are this. Right now, we're in a very inventory strained market, meaning there are just not that many houses to sell. And I'm an agent that deals with buyers and sellers. So that duality gives me a little bit edge because I can talk to a buyer and let them know this is what sellers are thinking. This is how we need to structure your offer so that it's favorable for the seller. Because right now, there are 42 of you, buyer, wanting this one house. 42 of you are writing house. So let me step into my seller's shoes so that I can tell you what they're looking for so that we can make your offer more competitive and more compelling, right? To at least get to that next round of negotiations, should there be one. From a seller's standpoint, you have the gold. You have the house. So, I tell people, I've been telling my sellers here recently that usually the seller controls the price, controls the terms. So you'll remember, Joe, like when you write an offer on a house, you're telling the seller you can close. You're telling the seller how long you need to do your due diligence on the house and that sort of thing. In today's market, the seller controls all of that. The sellers are even controlling when and if they leave the property after closing, right? So we're definitely in a market that is like no other, where the seller is securely in the driver's seat and the buyers are either willing to deal with that or they're not. And it's a really quick conversation. If you're a buyer in this market and I don't want to pay over asking price and I don't want to waive this and I don't want to waive that and this may not be the market for you. Or I want the seller to pay this, I want the seller to repair that. This may not be the market for you. And if it seems like that flows out of me very easily, it's because I have this conversation several times a week with buyers. And then for sellers, my thing that I have to remind them of is, we still want to operate ethically, right? We still want to represent our properties in a manner that is truthful. We still want to be reasonable with what we are willing to do as far as repairs and things like that. We just want to make sure that it's a win-win situation for everybody. So like I said, it's an opportunistic market right now. A lot of people are finding this market challenging because the buyers agents than we have listing agents. And I think that's just how it is in the real estate market. For buyers agents, it's super duper challenging. On the listing side, which I'm skewing myself more toward listings. But on the listing side, there are challenges there too, but it's definitely, I'll say at this point in time, it's a little easier because you have.
And how do you navigate buyers? Because you may see the asking price may be a little lower than when you look at the average comps in the neighborhood, and maybe help people understand why the comps are important. But have you seen a strategy where they may purposely have it a little lower than what they probably could get if they have it? But have you seen that strategy to drum up offers with versus if I know that if I see a property that's listed and I'm looking at when they bought it and it's only like a 30K gain in profit, you're kind of like, okay, why is it listed so low when the market and the comps are much higher? Talk to us about that process and how do we gauge the asking price, understanding the comps, and how do we navigate those two?
Right. So some great things that you brought up in there. So is there a strategy that says maybe we should list your property a little bit below the market rate so that we can get more interest and more offers, thereby driving the sales of your property up? Does that exist? Yes. That is one of my favorite strategies for ensuring that the seller gets as many offers as they can handle, so that they get the best price for their property. However, in today's market where inventory is so strained, right now, I used to say I don't take overpriced listings. I don't, if you're out in left field on what you want for your house, then we probably don't need to work together. It's not that I've changed that. It's just that I don't know what overpriced is anymore. With people making offers $70,000, $115,000 above asking price. What is price anymore? And waiving appraisal contingencies and things like that. So which brings me to another point. There's the market rate, right? Market rate is what is the market willing to pay for this property. The thing that market rate doesn't account for is risk, right? Because the market doesn't really care about risk. The market, as in the buyers that are interested in the property, they don't care. They need the house. So they're willing to pay more, even if it doesn't appraise. It's almost like you don't even hear about that anymore, because people already know that they're going to be paying even more than a value. So that's what value is. What is the market willing to pay? Then you've got the appraised value. The appraised value is all about risk, right? Because in many cases, the bank doesn't care about the number of buyers that were interested in that property. All the bank cares about is, what have the properties around this one closed for, the comps, like you mentioned? What have those properties closed for? Because if this property is well above that, then there's some risk in there. Because the value, let's say the value's here, the actual value based on comps is here. But now we're well above that because there were 42 buyers that were interested in the property. Again, the bank doesn't care. The bank says, okay, well, if the properties around it closed for, 300,000, give it 5% more than that for the interest from those buyers. And yet you're under contract for like 15% over that. So, it brings in that dissonance, if you will. So it's a little bit of a, from a pricing strategy standpoint, like I said, there is no price that I won't consider at this point, because I haven't seen any property listed that there wasn't a buyer willing to pay price was.
And follow up to that in terms of the risk and obviously the appraised value and comp rates and that 5% to 15%, obviously that 10% difference is key. But you mentioned something earlier in terms of even when you were buying, it's a totally different market. And as we think about 2008 and the way the market was then, is there any correlation or any risk we need to be concerned with? And I know that was a totally different scenario with some of the predatory lending practices, where the financing is a little bit more stable in terms of they're not putting people in homes they can't afford. But
Right.
tell us a little bit about when you think about the market then compared to now, do we see some of the same risks where if we are paying over 15%, that bubble, is there a potential bubble that could happen?
Right. I think it's a great, great question. And it's kind of the question that's on everybody's mind, right? I wish we had the crystal ball to know if we're in a bubble or if this is sustainable. I think that this idea of people paying, and the $115,000, that's a real example. There was a house here in Matthews, right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, and it was listed for $400,000 and it closed at 515. So in a neighborhood that should have been around 380. So so it's a very real thing, but I assume that whoever made that purchase and brought that additional money to the table is not necessarily concerned about being upside down with the equity in their house, because they're going into it that way. I think the biggest difference between 2008 and 2020 is that, because a lot of people think there's a foreclosure crisis looming, right? And right now we're moratorium on foreclosures that's about to be lifted, I believe, at the end of June. So it's like, oh my goodness, these people haven't been paying since March, and what are they going to do? And all these people are going to get set out of their homes, and that's going to be it for the real estate market. I don't think it is, because I think that the people that are currently in mortgage deferral and forbearance, no matter what their financial situation is, more than likely when March happened last year with COVID, those people had positive equity in their homes. If they had positive equity in their homes in March 2020, that on average, what are we looking at? 21% has their equity has gone up by 21%. So all they have to do is list the house. You don't have to you don't have to go into foreclosure this time. I think in 2008 we had a lot of people who were upside down in their homes. So there were a lot of short sales. There were a lot of foreclosures because some of those folks didn't have a choice. As real estate agents, one of my biggest concerns right now is that there will be people who lose their homes in this situation just because they lack the knowledge or don't have relationships with people who can tell them differently. So one of the things that I ask, and I know we're not talking about how I generate leads or anything like that, but one of the things that I ask people when I talk to them is, number one, do you want to sell your house? You know that. I ask you that forever. I ask people to your house, and then I ask, do you know anyone who wants to sell their house? And the third question that I've asked, that I've asked at the beginning of the year is, do you know anyone who should sell their house? Because what I'm asking there is, do you know someone that's in trouble? Right? Because there's a solution to the trouble that they're in. So I think that given that there is a solution, we're probably not headed into the foreclosure crisis, the big bubble bursting, that a lot of people are anticipating. I mean, and that's just Miranda's logic, based on the conversations that I'm having. I feel like some of the people, as a matter of fact, I'll give you an example, and this was even before the market that we're in now. Someone contacted me because they were told that they needed to short sell their house. They needed to do a short sale to get them out of the trouble that they were in. They had not paid their mortgage in 9 months. And whoever they talked to said, well, you just need to do a short sale, get out of it. Okay. So thing about short sales then, I didn't have a whole lot of knowledge in that area. Since then, I've kind of figured out how that whole thing works. But at the time, I just take a look at the numbers. Let me just run the numbers. Let's see what the market value of your house is. How much do you owe? They told me how much they owed. Okay, the market value is well above what you owe. So why are you, if this isn't a short, this is just selling your house. This isn't a short sale, right? So even though they hadn't paid their mortgage in 9 months, they were able to sell their house, walk away with about $27,000 in their pocket. So like, that's a real world example of sometimes the knowledge isn't there, so people don't know what to do, and maybe they would have been foreclosed on, and that would have been tragic, considering that they have the money. And the other thing to mention too is, while people are waiting on this foreclosure, while equity is up 21%, if the banks have to foreclose, they are not going to be selling those properties market value, because the demand for houses is not going anywhere. And one of the things a couple of things are driving the demand, right? So you've got interest rates are low. You mentioned that earlier, right? Interest rates are low. Matter of fact, back below 3% as of just what back percent. People are tired of the houses that they're living in. They're too small to have everybody working from home. So COVID has created just some angst in people, and they're ready to move. So you've got that, as well as people buy houses for the same reasons. And that none of that has changed because of COVID. People buy and sell real estate because someone was born, died, because someone got married, and because someone got divorced. Those are the four things that drive the real estate market. Things have stopped happening.
A few things actually came top of mind, during that conversation. Part of that is the foreclosure, right? A lot of people are thinking, well, let me just wait for foreclosures. I think, well, one of the things I want to ask is how important to understand your market as well, right? Some areas may be a little bit more inflation proof. Where I'm buying in the DC area, it's pretty inflation proof because of the government. Where some areas you can take that risk, and you may be able to get some properties relatively cheap. However, you mentioned how foreclosures impact the market on the other end, because once you have a few mortgage homes that's foreclosed, those comps come down as well, right? So talk to us about just understanding some of those nuances.
Sure. So in a general sense, that's absolutely right. Usually we see foreclosures sell for a lot less. And I think that people are still thinking about, again, 2008, 2009, when you were able to buy foreclosed homes for pennies on the dollar. That is no longer the case. And not only that, not only could you buy them for pennies on the dollar, back in 2008 and 2009, you could buy foreclosed homes with a loan, right? You could you could buy a foreclosure with a loan.
Right.
What we've seen in the last years here, I mean, I'd love to talk to someone who was able to buy a foreclosed home in the last couple of years if they were able to do it alone, because generally those are buyers. There's so much cash in the real estate market right now, and there's so many investors who will grab that property, upfit it, have a tenant in it, and it is now an income producing property for them. And it's very hard to if you're getting a loan, even a conventional loan, it's very hard to compete with a cash buyer who can close in 2 weeks. So yes, in the past, people were really able to capitalize and get deals on foreclosures. Like I said, I don't really think that banks are going to be pricing foreclosed properties below the market. They just really don't have to. I mean, think about like builders. You mentioned the price of lumber and all that stuff. Like everything is market driven, right? So builders are building fewer homes. They're building fewer homes because as long as the demand is as high as it is, they're writing their own ticket on what they're. I mean, they've got the increased cost of lumber, so everybody knows that the homes are going to be more expensive. But also, we're building fewer of. So there's more people that want homes, but there are fewer homes. So the price of homes just continues to go up, up, and up. So, and that was the builder example, but getting back to the bank is not unaware of that. So when those foreclosed homes and short sales and all that stuff, when that stuff comes to market, it's going to be pretty close to market rate, if not at market rate.
One of the other strategies I'm curious of, and this is probably tied into as buyers are navigating this market, and what should they be asking you as they're getting starting the relationship? So for example, are you able, when you think about your team, how do you structure your team around you? Is it just you? Because if it's just you and you're just working with 50 people, how much time will you be able to navigate or support me versus your team? Or and maybe are you able to, you have those relationships with builders, developers, so you know what's hitting the market, understanding some of the planned development. So it's not just what you buy, it's where you buy and what's going to build around it. So talk to us about that process and what people should be asking you, and the kinds of partnerships, services that you offer, and then just some of the strategies around the negotiation. Particularly, are you able to get pre-market before it hits before that listing hits? Do you have those relationships so that I don't have to get into the the competition? I can go in and get this property before it even hits the market. So talk to us about what we should be asking you
Mm-hmm.
or any realtor as we get into this relationship. But then how do you manage the people around you? Do you have a partnership with teams? Do you have partnerships with developers? So talk to us about that, and why is that important?
Sure, sure. So I'll start with that about the team. So yes, I actually do have a team now. As far as a team of producing real estate agents, I am the producer. So I list property and I sell property, right? However, there is support that is needed in that function. So I have a team of showing assistants that show property for me when I'm not available. Without a doubt, working with buyers is a time consuming process. It's time consuming, takes you away from your family. It, runs, you're all up and down the road and all that kind of stuff. And it's what we sign up for as realtors. However, it's not the most productive time, to be honest with you. And I've gotten to a place in my business where, for me specifically, the most important thing in my business is to be productive, right? So to be efficient and to be, and the most efficient and productive things for me to do is negotiate contracts and find new listing business. So those are the things that I do every single day. Now, when it comes to the buyers that I work with, I want all my clients to feel we are all family. It's like, I want to be your realtor for life. So I want you to have a fantastic experience with me. So in order to do that, I don't ever want to tell somebody, no, I can't show that today. I'm at my daughter's soccer game. I got this, I got that. That's why I use the showing. Because if you are servicing, 20 buyers at one time, and everybody wants to see the same property, because sometimes I have multiple buyers in the same price point. As an example, under 250,000, if under 300,000, let's say in Charlotte, and let's say that you have an FHA loan, there's only, I mean, right now today, because I checked it before I got on, right now today, there's only 8 properties in Charlotte that fit your criteria, right? There's only 8. So if I'm working with 10 buyers that are under 300, more than likely they're all looking at the same properties. And so instead of me going out and showing the same property 10 times, I have showing assistants for that. And my clients appreciate that because number one, there's never a time that we can't show a property unless the property is not available. So you always feel like you're getting my very best, and you are. And then number two, the pace that the real estate market moves at, there is just no time. It's like you don't have time to have a family. So if you're going to have a family, if you're going to have, a life outside of real estate, you have to have a team. You have to have a team of people that work with you. And then once I get my clients under contract, I work with a transaction coordinator who basically coordinates that back end of the transaction. As a realtor, I don't necessarily need to be involved work of it all. I get you under contract and negotiate any repairs, appraisals, anything like that. I do that. But when it comes to the paperwork of it all, that's not, number one, that's not my ministry. And number two, that is not productive time for me in my business. So that's the team part of it. When you speak about relationships, real estate is a relationship business without a doubt. People do business with people that they know, like, and trust. So I've got to be all three of those things to everybody that I encounter, whether it's on social media, at the grocery store, my family, my friends. I need to be the person that people know, like, and trust so that they'll feel comfortable doing business with me and so that they'll feel comfortable referring business to me. When it comes to relationships in the business with developers and whatnot. So yeah, I also have relationships with builders so that if there are that builder has that come back on the market, like it was under contract and now it's back on the market because, for whatever reason, buyer changed their mind, lost their job, whatever, it comes back on the market. I have builders that let me know that first so that I can check my inventory of buyers to see who is this a fit for. Because if there's somebody waiting on a new build down the street and they're number 57 on the list, and now we've got something that just came back on the market, does it make sense for you to slide down the street and be in a house in July versus, January? So I have those types of relationships. I have relationships with contractors, with painters, with folks that build decks, put in swimming pools, things like that, so that I can feel comfortable referring my clients to them. And not just my clients. I want everyone to feel like they can call me. I want everybody to think of me as home advisor. You don't need to go on home advisor. Just call Miranda. She knows somebody that can take care of whatever it is that you need done as it relates to your house. I want to be that resource, and even outside of that, I want to be the resource that connects people for whatever that you are looking for. So even outside of real estate, I feel like my job, not only I'm building houses now. I might be manifesting, but no, I feel like my job is to, build relationships, not only for myself, but also in my community. Who can I connect in my community? Before COVID started, I would have coffee chats in person, coffee chats, and I would schedule a coffee chat at, like, let's say 9 a.m. and this is just a quick 30 minutes, sometimes 15. Like, just come meet me in your building. I would go to people's buildings like Gateway Center, downtown Charlotte. Go and let's just meet at the Starbucks and let's just catch up for 30 minutes. And then I would have my next one. I'd usually do two, but I'd have my next one come down that maybe worked in the same building, maybe one building over, but they would come down. And before the other person is done, the new person is here. And now this may be an opportunity for two people to connect, right? Because you both work at Bank of America, you both work at Wells Fargo. Do you know such and such? Do you know that kind of thing? So I like to think of building relationships, not just in my business, but just in my community. And so that's something that's super duper important to me. And then finally, pre-market properties. So you've got the builders that call me to say, we got a property coming back on the market. The other relationships that I build are in the real estate, other listings, right? I want listing agents to call me too when they have something that is coming, right? So if you know that I'm going to write a good offer on it, because that's what I do. And I work with clients who know, like, and trust me, and they understand that I'm not going to ever put you in a position. I'm not ever going to recommend anything for you that, number one, I wouldn't do for myself, right? Still your decision, but I'm going to make my recommendations based on my knowledge of the industry, based on my knowledge of the house, and that sort of thing. So if there's a listing agent who says, well, let me call Miranda, put this on the market, let me just call Miranda and see if she has anybody that might be interested in this. that's an asset. And I get those phone calls. And like I said, I go through my inventory of buyers, and you might be waiting on this neighborhood, but have you considered this neighborhood in the same school district? So let's think about this house. Let's walk through what it looks like for you to live there. And then the other thing that I tell my buyers when stuff like that happens, it's like, this is your opportunity to jump the line, right? I mean, and keeping it all fair and everything, this is just like a coming soon that we know about, but this is your opportunity to jump the line, so to speak. So does it have to be the perfect house, or does it just have to be the perfect investment for you right now? And if you can answer that question and say, no, 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 it's got to be the perfect house, okay, all right, well, we'll keep waiting. But sometimes it just needs to be the perfect real estate investment for you right now.
No, I thank you for that. And the reason why I asked that, because I think it's important for the I think it's important for the buyers to understand what kind of relationships that their realtor is building. Because, if things are important, for example, for me, I like to understand what's planned development around, because then I know what my future return on investment is. Am I okay
Mhm.
with waiting for those planned developments to come out, particularly if it's, as you start to see more of these neighborhoods where you can live, work, and play, and they're walkable. And that's always important. And when I talk to realtors, and if they don't know, well, yeah, they're building a subway station right across the street or up the street.
Mhm.
Those are the types of things, because I know that also brings other development around. And so I think it's important for people to understand why those conversations should happen and why they need to pay attention to them. You
And where to
mentioned,
get that information, right?
absolutely,
And,
yes.
and where to get that information. The real estate agent, we should be, maybe not at every city council meeting, but we should at least have a line in there to where we know what is coming in our cities. And especially, again, real estate is hyper local. So there are some neighborhoods in Charlotte that you can't tell me anything about, because I know just about everything there is to know about that neighborhood, out that side of town. So it's up to the real estate agent and real estate professional to take their knowledge beyond just, I understand real estate contracts. I understand what, a due diligence in North Carolina. I understand what an appraisal contingency is in South Carolina. You got to know more than that. You've got to become hyper local, and you've got to become the expert in the areas, where you plan to thrive.
Right. And part of that, you have your realtor, but what's the balance where, as a home buyer, how much work should you also put into this process where you're also doing your research? Talk about that balance, because you know I don't think it should be 100% your realtor trying to find these properties, but talk to us a little about the role of the buyer in this process, other than just being ready, willing, and able. But what are some of the other things they need to consider in this process?
So that is a great question. That's a question. So yes, as a buyer, you should, but I hate to say what you should do as a buyer, because there are buyers who relocate to the Charlotte area, right? So I don't expect them to know much about, if your job is relocating you here, I don't really expect you to know much about Charlotte. That's what I'm here for, right? I'm here to help you understand, what's going on in Charlotte. So I think that what I want to see buyers do is be open to the information that's being shared with them from their real estate professional. So I guess I'm struggling a little bit, because I'm like, I kind of expect them to know a little bit, but I understand when they don't. I understand, especially in certain communities, when home ownership hasn't been a part of your consciousness.
Right.
It just hasn't. My parents owned our home. My parents owned the home that we grew up in, right? So home ownership was always just, and then my dad sold real estate. So of course I bought a house in my early 20s. Like, what else was I going to do? So that's me though. So I understood about the real estate market and that sort of thing. When people come to me, sometimes that's just not their experience. So they truly are a blank canvas. So all I ask is that you just, that you're open to the information, some of the stuff that's going on in the Charlotte, North Carolina real estate market is so outlandish, but you still have to kind of listen to the real estate professional. Trust me when I say I'm exaggerating. When I'm showing you examples of houses that have sold $115,000 over and things like that. My biggest thing is just be open to receive the information, and then be open to the dialogue about whether or not this is the right time for you to become a homeowner.
And you mentioned working with people that are relocating, and I know Charlotte is probably one of the top relocation destinations for people that are flipping the zip, right? And that's a site that I actually follow, Flip the Zip, and I see a lot of people, and they always are inquiring about the Charlotte area. But typically, when people are relocating, I say they focus on the anchors. They'll focus on Charlotte, maybe if you're thinking for Charlotte, Huntersville, Ballantyne. How do you help people that are relocating to navigate that in a way so they don't focus just on the anchors that they see and hear, where there may be these smaller communities that they haven't considered, Bright Walk or Noda, right? And so, how do you help those folks that are really relocating and flipping the zip, to navigate outside of the big anchors?
So I like to say that we want to get really, really focused when we have our buyer consultation. I want to understand what the ideal community looks like for you. I want to understand what home looks like for you. So when I say in that buyer consultation, I usually have a full page of handwritten notes. Onto the back, I'm drawing arrows and all kinds of stuff, because I really want to make sure that I understand what that looks like. Because sometimes, and I just had one of my closings on Friday, was a couple that's relocating here from Chicago. And we did all the showings via Google Meet, and they showed up for their closing. That was the first time that they were physically in the home that they purchased in Huntersville, which was an amazing home. But anyway, but we talked and we talked. Even that couple, we talked and talked. And what they wanted was to be within 20 minutes, no more, within 20 minutes of downtown Charlotte. But the house also has to have X, Y, Z, and all the other alphabet. Okay, so let's go and and it needs to be under X dollars. Okay, got it. So let's go take a look at what that looks like. This one house that fits that criteria, right? So we go and we look at that one house, and then another one comes, and that ain't it either. So what we're finding out is that some of the things not willing to compromise as of the home, the space in the home, 2 designated office spaces, things like that. We're not going to find that at this budget within 20 minutes of downtown. So what we did was went further and further out, didn't want to be in Ballantyne, didn't necessarily want to be in Huntersville, but perfect house was in Huntersville. So as I navigate the home buying process with people who are coming in from out of town, I just like to, and I show them my notes. See, right. Some of the most powerful words in my real estate language are remember when you said, right? Remember when you said. So I wrote it down, I circled it, I put an arrow on it. You said such had to be present in the house for it to be the ideal house for you. So we just want to, for relocation clients especially, we just have to be very specific about what we're looking for. And we have to be very, in addition to being specific, it's kind of like the repetition of it all. 2 designated workspaces, outdoor space that you like, preferably an outdoor kitchen, preferably these things that you said. We want to make sure that that's at the forefront so that we're looking at the houses. The other thing about relocation buyers is they don't have a lot of time. So it's like that's why these folks that closed on Friday, we probably were on the phone. We were probably on the phone an hour and a half so that I could get all of those notes. And I had those notes with me every single time because we're checking things off every single time. This house has it. This house has, we're checking that stuff off, because when we get to the house where I don't have anything but check marks, when are we writing the offer? Because it's got to be this one, right? So that can be challenging sometimes with relocation buyers, but I think it's just the repetition of what they're looking for, That is the most important thing, so that you stay not only focused as the real estate professional, but you also keep the client focused.
Got it. And one of the things I wanted to circle back to is in this process, and it's probably even more important for people that are relocating. You see a lot of people that's being asked to weigh those contingencies, the inspection, the appraisal, and particularly if I am relocating, I may not know the area enough to know, okay, could I risk, waiving this inspection or this appraisal, or this house was built in 1964. How do I know the bones are good in this house? Meaning, have they done any upgrades? Have they kept up with keeping the HVAC systems? So talk, I know there's a balance there because you said it's a seller's market, but how should we pay attention to that as a buyer in this
Mm,
particular market?
it's a great question. And I'll say again, I'm speaking specifically about North Carolina real estate. I know that in South Carolina, there are contingencies on the contract for structural issues. I think there's an HVAC contingency, the roof, the appraisal, most important. Financing, I think, may even be a contingency in South Carolina. Um, North Carolina has no contingencies in their contract, um, none. So the only thing North Carolina sellers have to do is sell the house for the agreed upon price, period. All houses in North Carolina are sold as is. It says it on page 5. So if the seller chooses to do repairs, then they can. If the seller chooses to lower the price because the appraisal came in low, then they can. But it is a choice, and it's
Gotcha.
definitely not a contingency. However, I know that in other states, contingencies are they can be challenging for sellers for reasons, but in some states, then the buyer will out and get back their earnest money, or whatever it is in that particular state. So what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing from some of my colleagues in different states is that waiving contingencies has become just what you do as a buyer in order to, get your contract or your bid closer to the top pile. Because if it's like, and I assume that most states are very similar, have a very similar, or at least most East Coast states probably have a similar real estate market to North Carolina. It gets to the point when you get 40 offers where, all of the offers that still have contingencies go in one pile, where we are required by law to present all offers, period. No matter what's on it, we have to present it. So what ends up happening is that you categorize them as an agent, because you need to make it as easy as possible. You've got to present all of these. You tell your client, these are all FHA offers. Okay. This is what they all say. I went ahead and did the math on it. This is the one that nets you the most in FHA and has the most favorable terms. So that's FHA. These are all VA offers, right? This is the one that nets you the most, blah, blah, blah. These are all the conventional offers. This is da, 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 da. These are all your cash offers. This is all that, right? In addition, these are all the offers that, and of these different loan financing types, this stack waived all contingencies. Okay. And then this is the best one of the ones that waived all the contingencies. This is the best one of the ones that did not waive contingencies, and that sort of thing. That helps the seller to visualize what's going on, right? Because the seller, I swear, I don't know many people that can take in that much information. In North Carolina, the standard offer to purchase and contract is 15 pages. So 40 of them.
Right.
You definitely need an agent that's going to kind of get this narrowed down, for you. And when I say down, I just mean the pages in the offer. Still got to show all the offers to the client. But yeah, I think that we're going to see even more of people waiving contingencies. In North Carolina, I see now some of the listings I've had where people are writing in, no appraisal contingency. And I'm like, well, genius, we don't have one anyway. So, but I think what they're trying to say is that even if it doesn't appraise, the buyer is willing to pay. I've even had folks submit bank statements with offers to show proof of funds that the buyer can pay the shortfall should the house not appraise. So buyers are going to great lengths to get into houses, and it really becomes who's willing, to do the most. And I'm not talking about writing letters and stuff like that, because that's a fair housing violation anyway, and I don't present them. As a listing agent, I don't present letters that are written to the seller, because it's usually going to feel something about the buyer that would be a violation, whether it's we're married, we got kids, we're black, we're white, whatever, we're 27, I'm 87, whatever it is, could be something that someone could discriminate against you for. So we don't do letters, but the waiving contingencies is going to become more and more important, and I just don't think it's going away anytime soon.
Got it. You mentioned one of the things you did with one of your clients that was relocating in Google Meet. What are you doing to balance out COVID, right? Obviously, the real estate game, you have to see the house, right? Most people want to see this house that they're going to buy. Pictures only do justice. But how are you adjusting to COVID, and what are you doing to, and how do you feel this will help shape or shift some of the industry in the way that you guys manage the practice?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question, because it has changed forever. COVID has changed the real estate market forever. Excuse me. Um, so what I do now, I meet with clients still in person. Have to. A lot of my client meetings are done over some virtual platform. We show houses virtually times. If you're in Charlotte, we can show you a house. If you are out of state, then we'll do Google Meet. I've just found that that's probably for me the least clunky way to do it. Um, so yeah, used to be when I took a listing, I had to have a listing appointment in their house. I need to be in your house so that I can see what's going on under the rug and all the things. I am doing quite a bit of virtual listing appointments, because now you can take your trusty cell phone and you can show me your attic, or you can just put it down there in the crawl space, let me look around, that kind of thing. And it's much more efficient. It's like COVID has definitely it sounds crazy, but COVID has revolutionized the real estate industry, because so much of real estate has been, belly to belly. You got to be face to face to make the deal happen, to do good business. And it's just not true. We don't have to be face to face. I mean, I rarely have clients that even go to their own closings anymore. We don't even get the little pictures anymore to say sold by Miranda. We don't even do that anymore, because they're not there. They don't have to be there. Everybody's doing closings remotely, or drive-by closings and things like that. So when COVID hit in March last year, I was very concerned, as I'm sure a lot of realtors were, that this is the end. I don't, people aren't going to sell their houses. People aren't going to buy houses during COVID. And what actually happened is that more people bought houses. And I didn't see that coming. I don't know if anybody saw it coming. And we are still riding that wave. It has really ramped up the activity in the real. And then the other thing that COVID has done, and I may have mentioned it, is just the efficiency of it all. You know, when I was going to Panera Bread and Starbucks and all these places to have buyer consultations in person, you have to allow for you give the client a 5-minute window to be late or whatever, and then they show up and they got to tell you why they were late, and you got to talk about, whatever. But it's like, you don't get to the business of the meeting until 15 minutes into the meeting. So now we've got 15 minutes plus there's still another, 30 minutes that I need to talk about what's going on. And then they need to tell me about their ideal house. Now we've been here an hour and 15 minutes. Buyer consultations on Zoom, 30 minutes tops. 30 minutes and then on to the next. The other thing that that COVID has kind of forced a lot of agents like myself into doing is utilizing technology at a higher level. A lot of my buyer consultation has been, um, let's see, how do you put that? Basically, I've recorded videos of myself going through the 15-page offer, because you need to, the buyer needs to be aware of it, understand it. So we basically, made videos of that and put them all out on a website. And I give you a link to a website and you go and you take a look at this when you can. But make sure you do. Make sure you do, because it's important information. But we don't have to sit here and go through it in person. It's still me, and you still have an opportunity to do it, but it's just more efficient. And it gives you as a buyer an opportunity to review that information when it's good for you.
Got it. Okay.
Yep. And one other thing too, in North Carolina, not sure if it was like this where you are.
Miranda, can you hear me?
Uh-oh. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
And talking on Wi-Fi, it just disconnected
It's okay.
completely.
I can edit all that stuff out, so we're
Okay.
good.
Cool.
So we should be good. Let's pick back up. You were talking about, we were talking about COVID. And so one of the things I was just gonna mention there is just I love to see how people are reacting how industries are reacting and responding to market disruptions, right? And I think COVID-1 has that really has disrupted the market in good ways and bad ways. Obviously, we know the bad elements of COVID and what that's produced, but I think it's also reimagined a lot of these companies understanding how they move from a digital perspective and how they need to navigate these digital presences. But it also allowed them to be a lot more efficient, sounding like, I don't have to be in location to location, and trying to drive all over the city where I can set these client meetings up and the homes that we know that we like, then that's where we schedule the visit. So you can be a little bit more strategic when you're working with 20, 30 people, or your team can be a little bit more efficient as well. And that's been one of the things that I noticed in terms of the realtors who's been able to navigate that, where some of them don't even do Zoom, they're all just phone call, where that personal connection, and which I think Zoom provides, when you're able to still see each other via camera, helps build that connection, particularly if you're local, or if you're virtually, right, or outside of that state. So glad to see that the market is continuously helping people and making these industries disrupt. So um, as we start to close out, one of the things I'm curious is, as you go through this year, do you have what are some of the big things that you're working on? Some big bets, projects, anything you have coming up this year that you're focused on that you want to share?
So one of the things that I want to do more of is sharing in environments like this. So I, during the course of COVID, hired a coach, a business coach, and he has helped me tremendously to kind of break through some of my own limited thinking that I on about business, about I've been selling real estate for, I'm going into my 6th year selling real estate, and even with my numbers being pretty good, and my trajectory, it looks like I'm gonna hit some goals this year and all of that. Even with all of that, I still have a lot of doubt that goes on, and it just kind of plagues my thinking sometimes. So he's been instrumental in helping me to break through that. Okay, one of the things also identified is that some of the conversations that I share with him that I've had with other people, he has mentioned, you do know that you're coaching people. And he's like, and that's fine. If you want to continue to do that, you can continue to informally coach people and informally mentor people in real estate, and that's fine. Um, when you're ready to formalize some of those relations, he believes that there will be, and I believe that there will be tremendous growth in that area. So that is something that I'm interested in. And this is the first time that I'm actually saying that out loud, but I am interested in moving into the coaching space, real estate specifically. So that's something that I'm looking at. I'm also one of the biggest things that's kind of on my heart since the beginning of the year is that I do need to hire. It is time to grow my team. And so that is something that is coming. So that might not be big for some people, but it's huge. And it's one of those big, gnarly, scary types of things for me for some reason. So that's another thing that I'll be moving into. So possibly adding coaching, and also beginning to grow the team outside of just the showing assistant transaction coordinator realm.
Awesome. And part of, actually I wrote this down in terms of advisor, coach, teacher. So it's interesting that you mentioned that. I wrote that down earlier because as I was thinking about just the role of the real estate agent, and it's so much more than just saying it's the real estate agent. You are an advisor because you're providing, hey, guidance on this wealth building opportunity that people have to, but then you're also coaching and helping them understand. So it's interesting that you're looking to go into that space. So I think it'll be awesome. And I think people will need it. And, particularly with growing the team, right? And I think, one of the things I look at as a top 10% producer I look at you as, not just, a person that's selling these beautiful properties. You're also, you're a management, you're an executive. So the ability to build that team, who best to do that than somebody that's in the top 10% of their peer group? Then you can teach others to do that. And that growth just shows that you are expanding your business. And growth means success. Growth means that you're doing things in the market that people appreciate. But you also recognize, and I think this is the key, is I can't do it alone. I must delegate. And as you think about that path to success, it's understanding that you can't do it alone. If you're trying to do it alone, that means you're not operating with a growth mindset. You're not adjusting to the market. You're not adjusting to your business growth and really making sure that you're reinvesting back into it. So it's just interesting to hear you say that. But looking forward to that, your team, and you growing your team, as well as moving into some of these different avenues. And I think you'll be great at it, because you do have just this natural ability to coach and really relate to people. So good luck with that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I want to move past the ceiling of this is all I can do, because I think a lot of times we put a cap on our own achievement sometimes by thinking that, this is all I can do. And it's like, okay, that might be all you can do, but what does all you can do look like when you have the proper support in place?
Absolutely.
And so I'm literally coaching myself through that right now.
Awesome. As we close, typically I like to lead the audience with three things before we go, right? And this is a thing that if they didn't take anything from this podcast, and there's three things you just want to make sure that they do take away, what are the three things you would like to share before we go that we should know?
So the first thing that I would is understand that this real estate market is full of opportunity, whether you are a buyer or a seller. The money needed to purchase real estate has never been cheaper than it is right now. Interest rates are at an all-time low. And we don't know where interest rates will be in 6 months. But what we do know is that right now the interest rates are great. So if you're a buyer, take advantage of that. Push through some of your limited thinking around not wanting to pay more than asking price. Push through that, because some of those neighborhoods that you didn't want to pay over asking price, you didn't want to pay $10,000 over asking price last year. Well, now people are paying $30,000 over asking price in the same neighborhood. So waiting doesn't work when it comes to real estate. So push through that as a buyer. And then if you are a seller and you have a property that for whatever reason you could stand to cash it in, this is the time to do it. Okay, so use that opportunity as a buyer or a seller. Make sure that this real estate market is working in your favor. Okay, that's number one. Number two, please listen to your real estate professional. This is a challenging market to navigate. Make sure that you're aligned with a real estate professional that understands at a hyper local level what's going on in the market, and make sure that that real estate agent has strategies, proven strategies that can help you achieve your goals. Okay. And then the third thing is get a real estate license. I always tell people that. I started by saying that my dad told me at 18 to get a real estate license because it's a good license to have. I didn't listen to him until I was 38. You don't have to be like me. Go ahead and get your real estate license. Real a industry that has very low barriers to entry, but no earning caps, right? And I know all entrepreneurs say that there's no cap on my earnings, right? However, real estate is one of the lowest cost business to start, lowest barriers to entry, and can definitely provide some of the highest and greatest rewards, not only in money, but also in just those feelings of knowing that you brought home ownership to the table for some buyers and you help some sellers, right, cash in on some investments and really provide that generational wealth that everybody talks about. But as a real estate agent, you're truly the gatekeeper of that generational wealth for buyers and for sellers. So those would
Gotcha.
be my three things.
Thank you for that. That's kind of hard too, Miranda. Um,
Oh my God, I'm serious though.
I know. No, I love that advice. So understand, the market is full of opportunities. I love that. And then listen to your agent. I think that is key, and ensuring that you also are clear on what you want as well, so your agent knows how to best navigate. And then also just get that license. I think it also helps people as you want to build multiple streams of income. That could be a very passive income opportunity. So thank you for that, Miranda. And as a top 10% producer in the state, really appreciate you joining and just sharing your knowledge today. For our listeners, for those who are either buying a home or selling a home, I hope this podcast will really give you some insight into how you need to navigate the market, whether you're in North Carolina or Charlotte or South Carolina or in other states. This information is valuable in terms of how you should understand and navigate the market, how you should manage and navigate finding a real estate agent, and how you should show up with them and understanding your expectations are being met, but also that you're clear in what you are looking for as well. So hopefully, you guys can get a lot from the episode. So as we close out, Miranda, I want to thank you. Tell us how to find you.
Oh,
Give
absolutely.
us your social medias, your websites.
Sure. So so it is going to be three different things. So on Facebook, which is where I communicate quite a bit with my sphere of influence, I am Miranda Acree Solomon. And any version of that spelling, you'll find me. And on Instagram, I am Charlotte underscore native underscore realty. And you'll find me there. And then my website is charlottenativerealty.com.
Awesome. So reach out to Miranda. She's a wealth of knowledge. She's been my realtor and selling my home there in the area, and really appreciate you joining us. And hopefully we'll continue to see your success in the future. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Joe.
Absolutely.